you know, cropped back and cut and dyed, and they live a really outrageous life.
Why do you think they do that?
Why? I don't know, to attract attention.
Don't like it.
Why? Can you tell me why?
Well, I would say it's offensive.
Oh, stupid. Oh, I don't understand much.
You don't understand it.
Oh, punk is, in my opinion, sort of just fairy sort of music. Hairy's, you know, no, not much sense to it.
Punk is punk is punk.
Oh, yeah, they had a program on TV here, I think on 60 Minutes, and they kind of went into their den and they showed you a bit more, you know. They were charging people to be photographed with them and things like that. I don't know if you've seen that yourself, but that's, you know, about it.
Punk. Horrible.
Why do you say it's horrible?
I don't like the attire, I don't like the hair.
Do you think there's anything more to the way they dress than just a fashion?
Oh, no, I think it's just another sort of a thing generations go through.
Punk is, I don't know, I came over Wodonga. We got not rubbish like this.
You seem to think it's rubbish.
It's a time for the young people, so I don't know. I don't blame them, you know. I see an idiot got white hairs, lilas on this side, you know, and all them look like the idiots.
Punk? Oh, I've got no idea, I don't think. Punk? No idea.
Way out.
Punk. Pretty confusing, I think.
Well, I don't have an opinion actually, but I imagine it's pretty loud, way out type entertainment that young people, you know, get up to.
P-U-N-K. Is it?
Yep.
Oh, just rubbish, isn't it?
So how would you define punk in that sense?
Well, it's an attitude to living.
Punk to me means trying to sort of, you know, get rid of all the restrictions that you've been brought up with, like, you know, how you judge people by what they look like and things like that, and plus also trying to find an alternative to what there is already existing in the society.
I think mostly people are out to have a good time and, you know, not be worried about being people saying, you know, you can't do this and you can't do that. I mean, I don't think image has got all that much to do with it, really. I mean, it's what you believe yourself that's most important.
Yeah, everybody just wants to be free to get into what they want without any hassles.
What do you say to people who say that all punk is a fashion?
Well, I think they should look deeper into the issue than that. Sure, you know, like some people do have Mohicans and studded leather jackets and Doc Martens and that, but it's what's in your head, not what you wear. That's what's important, you know.
It's a lifestyle.
It's not to us. It might be to a lot of other people. It's just a fashion for a while, and then they might get sick of getting yelled at and, you know, harassed by people, and so they'll change their image to fit in with everybody else. But that's not what, you know.
But you don't have to look like us if you want to be into punk. Like, you're into punk, you know, but you haven't got coloured hair or anything. It doesn't matter what you look like at all.
1, 2, 3, 4.
But do you think the person who walks down the street, and I mean I've seen it happen so many times that a punk will walk down the street, you're walking some few steps behind and you just see people turn around and laugh.
That happens every day of our lives.
Do you think that'll ever change?
No, because whatever you're into, there's always going to be narrow-minded people that, you know.
That's true.
They just aren't into it, or they don't even take the time to stop and look and sort of think, oh yeah, you know, what are they on about? There's always narrow-minded people that are just going to judge you straight away.
People are just too scared of anything that's different from the norm, you know. They just can't handle it and won't take the time to try and speak to us and find out what we're like, you know. They just immediately assume that we're illiterate idiots, you know, because they've got too many ideas from, you know, the Sex Pistols and vomiting and all that sort of shit. But we're not like that, you know. But most people just wouldn't even take the trouble to try and find out what we are like or whatever. You know?
Surely, looking the way you are, aren't you bringing that sort of harassment onto yourself?
We would from the narrow-minded, you know, the real pigs, the real shithead people, but I think it's more important to try and show the other people who are receptive and want to know about us, to show them that we can go around and look like this and still be normal, intelligent people. And I think it's worth more to do that. And of course we're going to get flack from someone, because there's always dickheads out there that are going to yell at someone for something, no matter what you look like, you know. I'm sure there's hippies that get called poofters and almost bashed up all the time by guys. I'm sure there's you know, really, like blatant gay guys who walk around, you know, looking very feminine and that. They must get, you know, harassed and almost bashed up by people all the time too. You know, it's not just us.
1, 2, 3.
you go into the city and, you know, you see a few punk rockers, and these days people don't really turn their heads as much as they might have done a few years ago. I think it's, well, these days sometimes it's hard to tell who's a punk and who's not a punk, because punk is, you know, what's up in your head and what you think. It shouldn't be a fashion, really. And you might see some really trendy looking person with colours in their hair, and some old granny in the street might think, oh, they're a punk rocker, but then you might see some really straight looking guy walking down the street and he might have every punk record in the world.
Do you think it's becoming more accepted?
Oh, yeah. Like if I had to walk down the street with green hair like this 4 or 5 years ago, I would have got a lot more flack and a lot more hostility from people than what I would now.
So do you think in that sense that punk has achieved something?
Yeah, I think so. Something, but still not enough.
Your peace of mind is your own peace of mind.
I think it's achieved a lot in the sense that there's an international network of people communicating with each other via, you know, not record labels and things like that. Like
what it's turned into more of a,
I'm going to car punch you.
Say a sense of awareness. Like a lot of people are actually thinking about what's going on in the world and that, and people are coming up with more, I'd say, like more positive, like the lyrics are rebelling against what they see bad in this world, and there's a lot of things that are bad, and that's why I think that bands such as us and bands in other countries and that exist. You know, because I don't know, as a form of rebellion and as a form of change too.
Well, it's achieved people being more aware of political issues and things that are going on in the world.
But is that necessarily good?
Yeah, it's good. It's better than people just being mindless and doing what their government or what society tells them to do, instead of thinking for themselves.
It's good that it is good that they know. Then again, is that knowledge telling them to do anything?
Yeah, I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes to problems in the world. I think the 77 punk, it was good for its time, but looking back on it now, I don't think lyrically it achieved that much, because in 77 a lot of the bands weren't singing about really hard-hitting issues, whereas like Crass and bands like that overseas, and Australian bands like Depression and Vicious Circle are singing about, you know, a lot more hard-hitting issues now than what they were in 77. It's sort of been I see punk rock or hardcore or whatever you'd like to call it as a sort of a progression onwards.
because it seems to be making a lot more people aware of different situations that exist in the world, and it's created a really big underground network as well through magazines like Maximum Rock and Roll, and plus just writing to people in different countries. Seems to be breaking down a lot of the barriers between different countries through correspondence, mail and music and stuff like that.
Do you think it'll die out?
No,
No,
it's been going for nearly 10 years now, so...
But even so, I don't sort of see punk as just started up in the last 10 years. I see it like there's been radical artists and, you know, radical people right through the ages that have always stayed underground and, yeah, you know, and kept right out of society and stuff like that because they couldn't handle it. And I think punk is just now another expression of that. And so I think it'll keep on going forever.
It seems like now, like say in 77 it was one style, and then in 82 it might have been a bit more like leaning towards the hardcore and the GBH British bands, but now it seems like that everybody in all punk scenes, because of the correspondence and coming closer together, that every country music is having some sort of influence on all the other countries combined. That's what it seems like to me.
A lot of people think punk's dead. Well, I don't know why a lot of people think that, because punk at the moment is healthier and more full-on and more into it than it's ever been. There's hundreds and hundreds of punk bands throughout the whole world now than there was in 77. In 77 it was basically confined to England, and there was early Ramones and that in America, but now it's just, you know, completely opened up throughout the States and in a lot of other countries in the world like Italy, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland.
See, to me there's always been punk, there's always been... See, punk's just a word that people have put on the radicals now, you know. It used to be hippies and it used to be beatniks and it used to be something else. It used to be rockers, and it's like I've got this interview from Angry Anderson, and it says to this guy saying to him, you know, I'll play it to you later actually, says, you know, some people say Rose Tattoo are a punk band. He goes, well, to me all true rock and rollers involved in music are punks, and he reckons Lobby Lloyd's a punk and Billy Thorpe was a punk and I'm a punk.
It's a reaction to a lot of like ideas that we're brought up with, like, you know, like the idea that we've got to, you know, if there's a war we've got to all go and fight it, you know, and fight for our flag and our country and our leaders and stuff like that, which is really wrong, because, you know, there's no reason for these wars. They're just used to make money for the industrialists, really, you know.
Well, Australia seems to be like an island that's a big relay system. That's what I can gather from it. Don't you reckon? It seems like It's like this, you know, like everybody thinks, oh, you know, if there's a nuclear war, yeah, there'll be one, but they won't drop many bombs on Australia because of this and that. But I don't think it's like that. I think it's the other way, and that people are thinking that, well, you know, Australia's a little place out of the way, so we can put all our relay stuff there, and they'll cop it real bad, you know, because all the relay stuff's there, and it's only a little shitty island anyway, so nobody really cares about it, you know.
But it's that
you
little
know what I
shitty
mean?
island that's full of all the yellow cake that's making
Yeah,
all
that's
those
what I
things.
mean, yeah, that's what our song says, you know, uranium mining yesterday, MX Warhead's here to stay, and in that song Australia, Australia, it goes, Australia, Australia, our beloved land, come mining our uranium, we'll make a couple of grand. Goes good money for the economy, it'll provide you with a job, supplying the superpower with uranium for bombs. See, that's what Australia is. Australia is that fuel for the nuclear power. That's where it stands, right in the middle of it. It's like another song we wrote, money buys weapons, weapons for sale, supplier makes profit from war, you know, regardless of life. It doesn't... So it's like they're saying, yeah, well, we'll sell you uranium, we don't want to know what you do with it, because we're just selling you a product. But, you know, if you use those, put it in those bombs or, you know, make something from it that's going to kill another person, well, you know, it's sort of like we're not part of it, you know what I mean? It's what it's like they'll do it, but they don't want to sort of admit that, like this, that thing, right? There's this comic in this magazine I got from overseas, and it's got this guy, and it says, it's got a secretary, she goes, oh, I just relay the phone calls, and it's got this other guy goes, I just drive the truck, and the other guy goes, I just fly the aeroplane, and the other guy goes, I just relay the messages from the plane to the other plane, the other guy goes, I just flick the switch, and the other guy goes, I just fly the plane, you know? And then it goes, I just push the button, and then it's got this Chinese guy goes, which kills me.
The past has brought us war and death and famine and things like that.
But surely by looking back at the past, you can try and discover what went wrong.
Yeah, well, what's being
but things that's not happening, it's just getting worse.
I'm not saying ignore the past, I'm saying learn from it. Whereas people don't. They just say, gee, we were really great in World War I and World War II. We won, we bombed the Japs, we did all this stuff.
They celebrate the fact
I mean...
They had wars, you know.
And then you have places like RSLs and stuff like that.
Bruce Ruxton.
Yeah, like people like Bruce Ruxton and that. And you have places like the RSLs where all these guys who went out and fought for their country, you know, all this patriotism and stuff, and they go there and they drink and they talk about old times where they killed people.
Yeah, these are the people who say this are the people who justify, you know, going to Vietnam. They're the people who say, well, Vietnam, you had to do that because, you know, if we didn't do it, the communists would have done it.
somebody turned around and said, okay, we're going to take away what you've got country-wise. Like, say, a big bad, I'll use Russia as an example, came into Australia and said, right, we want all of whatever you've got to offer. Wouldn't you fight against that?
Well, wouldn't the Russians be as bad as the Americans? Aren't they the same thing? That's the way I see it. I mean, you know,
Like,
all we know
that's the problem, like, propaganda's installed into people's heads through that TV screen over there and through other things as well. People's minds are manipulated.
All we know of the Russians is what we get to see on...
Russians are just people, you know. If the Russians want to come here and take over the country, it's not the Russians that want to do it, it's the political leaders that want to do it.
It's the same. I mean, America's taken over this country already anyway, and nobody's actually got up and fought them. I mean, people think, gee, great, we've got Coca-Cola and Pizza Huts and
McDonald's and all these nice little companies.
Because you know, there's two types of villains. There's ones that are subtle, like America's really subtle. It uses different methods of oppressing people, whereas Russia's more direct, like a thug who walks down the street and whacks someone over the head with a club, whereas America's like the Godfather who says, hey, Billy, go and get this guy with it, you know? Like, they're the same type of villain, except they use different methods, you know?
Like, you look at man over the periods of time, in order to create change, he's turned to a violent method like revolution and that, right? And revolution, you kill someone, you replace them with another system again, you know? But this way, it's like people are trying to... They're saying, right, well, we want change, but we don't want to create it through violent means. We want to create it through a passive means. And the way to create change is through communication. Like, if you can sit down and talk to people on a personal level from any country about anything, that's going to create change.
We're taught that this lump of concrete that we're living on, this lump of bitumen, is natural, and that's what we're supposed to live on, you know? What, you know, people...
So what, are you saying we should all go back and live in grass huts? Would that
No, not necessarily.
Things are accepted too easily.
We've got to slow down. We're moving too fast.
Yeah. Where's it all heading, you know? Look at where things are heading, and the way the world is at the moment, like, humanity's gone, right, and you're just a little person walking around for the big companies to make a profit out of. That's what it is. You look at what you do every day and have a look at how many big companies you support. You're just living.
The fact that basic things like food, clothing and housing have become luxuries for some people. There's people who think, gee, I wish I could live in a house. The fact that those things have become luxuries is just barbaric, you know?
And as they increase the pressure, like these big industrial companies are feeding out, right? What's going to happen is people, like, they're striving to get cars now, you know, and a house and kids, you know, and let the kids go to a nice school,
2.5,
you know, or whatever. And then what's gonna happen? It's gonna go up more. Like, people are gonna, like, they won't be able to get a house anymore, so they're gonna be striving to get something like food or a flat. Or, it's getting harder all the time. Every year it's getting harder, and people, like, material possessions, right? You've got to own something. That's the way it is, you know. You've got to get a house or a car or something like that. And every year, like, you know, what's going to come down to, you know, you're going to have something like, geez, I've got this bit of meat in my hand today.
punks seem to be saying, oh, we're anti-commercialism, we're anti-materialism, and yet here you are making money.
I'm not making that much money. I've put out 7 records at the moment. 4 of them are 7-inch EPs and 3 of them are albums, and I've got Depression's new Australia mini album coming out. But it does cost a lot of money to put out a record. By the time you've paid for artwork, the actual vinyl, the covers, you don't make that much money unless you can get your records licensed to other independent labels over in the States, and then they can sell a lot. But it's an uphill battle, you know. You can't. Most independent labels, most people that run very independent, sort of small independent labels, basically do it out of the love of the music rather than to make a lot of money. And if I ever got to the stage where I did put out a record and it did well in Australia and I got it licensed overseas, and sure, you know, we sell quite a few thousand copies like the bigger bands from overseas do, I'd probably put that profit back into a recording studio in Melbourne, so punk bands in Melbourne and in Australia could go through that studio and we could release stuff on a cheaper basis, you know.
And when you die, which you eventually do, which a lot of people don't
come to terms with,
yeah, they all take it away from you. There's death taxes and things like that, and these funeral parlours say, here, look, we're going to plant you in this pot of grass when you die, give us $2,000, you know. And that's just,
it's not who you are when you die, it's what you've got, what you're left with. It's what you've made.
Like I've walked through cemeteries, and you see, shut up Phil, and you see like these families, and they've got this big plot, and they've got all these big sort of like black marble sort of monoliths sitting there waiting for their bodies to perish so they can be buried under it. It's just another material possession. When you're dead, you know, people will walk through it and say, hey, gee, look at that guy, he must have been rich, he's got a really big grave. And you go from one grid pattern, which is streets, all going straight or a bit curvy sometimes, into a funeral fucking home, a grave. This is all more streets and going like that and all little plots. It's just occasionally curves. It's just really sick.
The problem is some people are living their lives in graves.
Yeah.
You know, they every day
stress.
They're continually like they've got stress piled upon them, right? But they never ever they live their lives. They never ever think about. Maybe they do think about it, but they never ever really do anything against what's giving them so much pressure. They've got no freedom. They've got no real freedom. There's a lot of people that don't want to work, but they work.
Most people
they've got to bring in the money.
Aim for the natural capitalist thing or whatever. Not even capitalist. It involves everyone of getting married, getting a house, and then trying to get a car, trying to get a holiday house, and it goes on and on. You know, and people have, you know. Go insane just trying to get that aim, you know, what's that aim for?
What do you think the individual should do about it?
Be yourself.
Be yourself.
Do what you want to do. I mean, don't go around hurting other people, but just do what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean...
Have a good time, enjoy life.
Even if you
really short.
Can't change anybody's minds, even if nobody ever listens to you, at least you'll have the satisfaction of knowing I wasn't like them. I was at least something different. I wasn't one of the millions of people who just walk along through Flinders Street Station saying, gee, I'll finish work, I can't wait till I get home, and then get up the next morning and go, gee, I've got to go to work again. Just, at least you're not one of those people who've just been so programmed that they just can't see any other way of existing.
If you come here to watch a bunch of robots, there are no robots.
We're all different, we're all individuals, we've all got different emotions, different feelings.
Different opinions.
It's when you deny your individuality that, you know, you become...
The freedom, yeah.
You become a robot. And
Let's keep going.
Down! messed up. Think about it. Think about it.
You see, it all depends what your definition of drugs is too.
Cigarettes are drugs, coffee's drugs.
Yeah, see, that's
beer's
another
drugs.
thing. Yeah, there's all these drugs that you can buy in the system, but the system says to you that other things are drugs and you can't have those things, you know? To me, like a lot of people might see marijuana as a drug, but I smoke marijuana and a lot of people do in Australia, I reckon, and it's probably part of the bloody culture now in Australia. There's so many people smoke dope, you know? But to me, I don't see that as a drug, I see that more as a herb. But I see things like speed and heroin as drugs, you know, and to me, I think, I don't know, like if you want to use drugs, you've got to be careful with them, you know, and people can get into drugs and die from it, you know what I mean? They get sucked into it too much. It's like, I don't know, it's like this, I say it like this, right? If anybody, there's everything there in the society, you know? If you want to buy a gun, you can buy a gun. If you want to buy heroin, you can buy heroin. If you want to buy marijuana, someone will sell you marijuana. If you want to buy alcohol, you can buy alcohol. It's like there's everything, but you've got to sort of try and learn to get all these things under control, you know what I mean? Like, people get involved in things and they don't know what they're doing, you know what I mean? And that's how they get sucked into them, like they become alcoholics or heroin addict or bombed out on speed or just smoking dope all day and not doing anything, you know what I mean?
See, I don't see marijuana as a drug because it's a herb and it grows in the ground, you know, and it's pretty natural. And you can grow one in your a plant in your backyard and smoke it just the same as you could grow oregano or basil or, you know, spring onions in your backyard. It's all the same to me.
It hasn't got as many detrimental effects as all the other drugs. Like you can get stoned one night and you won't wake up feeling really fucked and hungover the next morning, you know. It has no effect on you physically.
So, you know, that just all points that it's okay for human use, you know.
But what about drugs like heroin?
Oh, yeah, no, we don't get into them.
Like
It's really bad.
You know, some people and they're not into it, and then they go, oh, you know, I've been getting into heroin and shooting up. It's really cool, and they just the whole personality and outlook on life changes.
It's shit.
1, 2, 3, 4.
image of the negative image that's been developed from punk or that's been generated from punk, where do you see that as having been?
Media misrepresentation.
Yeah, that would have a lot to do with it.
And plus, when you know, when there's and when there's something about punk in the media, you'll find it's always really over sensationalised, and you know, and the facts are distorted, like you know, and they just really play on the bad aspects. Like I Spit on Your Gravy, there was a thing in The Truth about them, you know, and it just made them sound just so bad and totally. You know, totally over.
So the worse they make us out, the more sales they make. So
yeah, like that guy in England, you know, with the super glue spiky hairdo who got sacked from his job. You'd heard about that for weeks and weeks and weeks. Yeah.
You see, these people watch Willisy, and Mr. Willisy tells them that all these punks, you know, 20 of them sleep in a bed and there's no rules except you can't shoot up heroin upstairs, you know. What do you expect them to believe if they see stuff
So
like
I'm sure
that?
Willisy... That's the image that's put across.
That's the image put to them, so they don't know any better.
Is it true? Is it a
It's
true?
not true.
There are people, there obviously are people who are like that. But every culture has their idiots. I mean,
listen to most of the bands that are involved in the punk thing at the moment, and most of them have got anti-violent songs, you know.
But you always hear about the bad aspects, but nobody ever takes the trouble to write about the positive aspects. You know, because it's not as interesting. It's not as interesting as slagging at somebody or knocking somebody to the ground or getting pissed or shooting up or something like that. It doesn't sell as many papers or whatever, you know.
But where do you think punk in Australia, or how do you think punk in Australia is going to improve things here?
I'd say basically it's really not. It
won't improve.
It won't
It won't make a big change over the whole thing at the moment. But basically, it's up to the people involved themselves to satisfy their own peace of mind and do what they can.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel disgruntled that the change that you're trying to bring about probably won't come to its fruition in
my lifetime? Yeah, I do, yeah. But I know that I'll have played a small part in it, you know, and so many other people have in the past, you know. But yeah, I do, yeah. But I've seen a lot of, in my lifetime, I've seen a lot of these things I'm talking about coming into existence though as well, you know what I mean? Which is really satisfying for me as well.
Like the way I feel inside, amongst my friends and the people I can talk to and relate to, it's something better than what I see out there. To me, there's two different worlds, you know. There's a world where, you know, you can go along and throw along with, you know, whatever's going, all these fucking corporations working, getting a house, all that stuff. Or you can become yourself and think individually, you know.
Against the grain.
Yeah. And then you find people that have got along the same thoughts, maybe not exactly the same as you, because they're individuals, and you find that you've got something to share in that, and you feel like you're not alone. And that you know, that's something that I found that it's been growing, because I've found more people who I can talk to and I can relate deeply to inside myself. I think a lot of the emotion and love and like showing your affection to someone, I think it's going now.
Yeah.
It's a circle.
Punk.
Punk.
Oh, just rubbish, isn't it?
Why do you say it's rubbish?
Your peace of mind is your own peace of mind.